We go. Welcome everyone to our Magnification Call for August 23rd. For some of us in Utah, school starts tomorrow, so that ought to be interesting. See how that goes. But for tonight, we are here together for our Magnification Call with Mr. Richard Paul Evans. Welcome, Richard.
Hi. How are you?
So good.
Good.
Good. Yeah, life is good, man.
Well, let's jump right in. I decided something. I'm going to. I'm not here on Sunday night. Carrie said, "Are you going to do this every Sunday night?" And she always says that when she wants me to do something else. And I said, "Yes, I'm going to do this every Sunday night." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Because it's a good thing to do. And when it stops being a good thing to do, then we're going to stop doing this." Okay? Because I can think of other things to do, but I think it's important. Also, it helps me to focus and magnify my life. And on top of that, I'm working on a book of essays, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to share with you ideas and concepts, and then I get to see your face in real life and share this with you. So tonight we're going to talk about the self-destruct button in our lives. So everyone remembers from Mission Impossible, who can hum the theme? Dun, 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 right? And what happens? And then comes out, the tape recorder comes on and says, by the way, this message will self-destruct in 5 seconds, right? And that was always cool because then the smoke would come up with self-destruct. Joyce, why did they self-destruct the message?
Because they didn't want anyone to know what the Mission Impossible was except for the people that were doing the Mission Impossible.
Exactly.
It was a secret.
They didn't want it to fall into the wrong hands.
Wrong hands.
So I always thought what a stupid plot device it was that they would have a button, and then inevitably they're always trying to like get back and stop it before the ship. They push the button and then change their mind. Okay, this is just badly written. It's like, really, why does this button have a why does this ship? They spent $1 trillion to build a space vessel, and by the way, let's put a button in there. That's like keeping a cyanide tablet in your cheek at all times, just in case you have to take yourself out. You know what I mean? It's like, why would they do this? And then I realized historically, it's pretty accurate. You know, if you start going through, like some of you see my favorite revolutionary show, it's like they would spike the cannons. If a cannon got stuck or they couldn't use it, they would spike it so it couldn't be used against them. And so last night we watched it, or 2 nights ago, watched the show Atonement. They're going through the shooting the horses. And Carrie was mortified. Why are they shooting the horses? And they're right there in Dunkirk Beach. I said, because they can't take the horses with them, and they didn't want the Nazis using the horses in later battles. Right? So scuttling ships is something that's gone on for a while. If they think the ship's going to fall into the wrong hands, they scuttle it. In fact, we found the Enigma machine in a submarine that had been scuttled. Unfortunately, they didn't realize we'd be able to pull the submarine back up. And that changed the war by finding an actual working Enigma machine. I also learned that the Space Shuttle Challenger had self-destructed it. That's not why it blew up, but did you know that? If you think about it, and I think it's all ingrained in our minds, the O-rings went wrong, it blew up, but then remember there were more than one explosions. That wasn't the O-rings. It was designed to have self-destruct in the rocket boosters, because could you imagine one of those slamming into Miami? The thousands of people would kill. It'd be like dropping an atom bomb, a nuclear weapon on a city. So those separate things, what happens, they push a button, self-destruct it, and both the boosters simultaneously explode. Why am I talking about this? Because these ships were wired for self-destruct. And I always thought that was just a bad plot device, but there's a time and place for it. And then I realized that I have met humans who are wired for self-destruct. I have met humans who actually act this way. In fact, I have one that is, anytime you meet someone who is suicidal, is that not the self-destruct button? I have a sibling who has incredible problems with this, both with suicide and suicidal tendencies, but also just the whole concept. One time I went to him, I said, hey, you look nice today. And he goes, do I usually look bad? I said, how did you get that out of what I just said? I gave you a compliment and you snatched an insult out of a compliment. And I thought his brain is wired wrong. And for years and years, one time I said to him, I sat down and he said, you know what, I'm not a man. I don't even, my wife has to pay our rent, our landlord. I go, what are you talking about? I paid you $100,000 last year. What are you talking about? Well, my wife got a job to help. How often? 1 day a week. How much does she make? $1,000 a month. I said, the landlord, well, he owns a property. I said, which you paid him money for. And I realized after talking to him for about a half hour, I realized I've had hundreds of conversations with him. I finally just put my head down and said, you know what? Let's just eat sushi. I said, I can't help you. There's not a single thing I can say that you would not turn against yourself. I go, do you realize, just talking, that what you just said is the stupidest thing? It makes absolutely no logical sense. Your wife works 1 day a week. She should be working 5 days a week like you are. The kids are all gone. Says she wants to sit home and watch TV. It's like, really? And it's like, because she had to work 1 day a week to help out, all of a sudden she gets all the credit for paying the rent? By the way, your landlord's making bucks off you. You're paying for his home and you just gave him credit? I go, I just want to say, what's wrong with you? And then I had an epiphany at that moment. I said, do you realize that if you treated other people the way you treat yourself, you would be in prison? You'd be in prison for attempted murder on 2 occasions. You'd be in prison for stalking, for violence, it's like, I went down this list, like you would be in prison if you treated other people. What makes you think it's okay to treat yourself like that? What happened? And seriously, it's like the wiring is just wrong. And yet, do we know people like this? And are we people like this? When are we wired that way? And how do we get the hell out of it? I just wanted to slap him when he said that about his wife paying his rent. Your wife makes 1% of the salary and you give her credit for everything. Frankly, you deserve a medal for staying married to her. You're the kindest person I know. You're the most giving. You work nonstop. She works you like a rented mule. It's like, why do you hate yourself so much? Well, the problem with this is the basis. When you hate yourself like this, it becomes self-fulfilling and self-perpetuating because you treat yourself poorly. So what happens if your wiring is wrong? Now, are there times when there truly are things that are wrong? Yeah, there are times. There are times when people have suicidal tendencies and that they need much greater help than I could certainly offer. And I have seen this. I have dealt with mental illness throughout my life. My family, it is so inbred in my family. I have sat by the side of 2 people who have just attempted suicide, trying to keep them alive. I have seen this. This is something that I'm familiar with. So I'm not trying to simplify this problem, but I think I have a couple things that might help. And when I realized that while most people might not be as extreme as my brother, we also engage in this on a smaller level. How do we self-destruct? Well, a self-destruct mechanism, if you look at the meaning, it's a mechanism that can cause an object to destroy itself or render itself inoperable. After usually a code is punched in, right? Something happens. And there's usually a reason. So let's start with, first of all, what is the reason that people might do this? What is the reason? What's the underlying reason? Any ideas? Joyce, yes.
Sometimes I think that people put themselves down because they think it's better to do it before someone else does it. It's like they want to prove that they see what's wrong with them so that no one else gets, they already know it. You don't have to tell me, I already know.
So what is that? Is that, why would they want
I
to
don't
do
know,
that? Is it fear?
maybe.
Fear of being discovered?
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen this. I have seen people self-destruct in relationships and even jobs. And I wonder sometimes if maybe they're more afraid of success. I think part of this comes back to this preconceived notion of what you think you are. If I believe in my core that I am worthless, if I believe in my deepest sense that I am unlovable, if I believe in my deepest sense that God cannot find me a value, then anything I do that is counter to that is a lie. Right? More than anything, we want our mindset to be congruent. Okay, we to have to counter that. If I tell myself that I am ugly and I walk into a room and someone says I'm good looking, they're lying, and I am lying if I agree with them. So part of this has to come down to this core belief system. And I believe that on some level, sometimes the greatest fear is being proven that that's the case. What if someone actually proves that I am worthless? That might be too much for me to handle. So we're playing this really interesting game of who we are and our existence. We see this with people with God all the time. Well, God hates me. All right, this is how God feels about me. That's why it's so important to understand that if you're a Christian, you come from a level that love cannot be earned. That you cannot make God love you more. And religions that counter that make you earn love, are manipulating you. Because if I can convince you that you have to act in a certain way in order to be loved, then I can make you do whatever I want. Right? And so we have to be extremely careful about our concept of love. But this is something that I came across. I mean, I told my brother, if you treated other people the way you treated yourself, you would be in prison. Something came clear to me. For some reason, we are able to divide how we look at ourselves and how we look at others. Someone who would never consider killing someone else, but might kill themselves. Clearly, there's something different in their mindset, the way they're viewing the world. You'd have to have something different in order to do that. So what is it? So what I realized as a writer is that there's kind of a simple test to solve this. And this can be handy in even all of your relationships. How many of you know relationships where you allow yourself to be abused? Do you know anyone in a relationship that they're allowing themselves to be abused, but would never let someone else be abused? I knew a woman who had been severely beaten every week of her marriage for more than 20 years. She finally stopped it when her animal of a husband hit her daughter and threw her down the stairs, and she realized he's going to kill both of us. It was only when he did something to her that she responded. Why? Was her daughter more valuable than her? Now, what happens is we put ourselves in this bubble, a very sick bubble, and we detach. If we're not living the 5 kingdoms, if you're living the 5 kingdoms, this isn't going to happen to you, right? If you're living the 5 kingdoms, you have a built-in mechanism Okay, you don't operate with a self-destruct button when you're living within the 5 kingdoms. Okay, so what I learned is it's because we become really good at this. In fact, I told my brother that he had a jiu-jitsu in self-insult. I go, dude, you are so good at that. People can give you flowers and you'll turn it into an insult like that. You are so good at it. You're like genius. It's like this horrid alchemy. I can turn gold into lead. Think about that. I can turn gold. I'm going to write that down. Have you ever found yourself in that place? Turning gold into lead? Okay. This is what I realized. Because we are in our own minds, we get caught up into paradigms that can be really incorrect, especially if you're living outside of your first kingdom. That's why people can say, well, that's why kids can be really abused and actually protect their abusers. That's why men and women, and yes, men do get abused in relationships, men and women get abused, and that they will actually protect and lift up their abuser. Okay. Now, but they're able to see it clearly if it's someone else. So I realized that if you were to transform yourself, that if you look at yourself as a third person, and when I write a story, my first book, The Christmas Box, was written first person. Okay. Patrice Anderson, what does that mean? If I write a story first person, what does that mean? I'm going to unmute you. I don't know if Michael's gone or not. Patrice, you need to unmute yourself. There you go.
As if you are in the story, as if it's about you.
Right. So it's told the main character is a narrator. You know, Christmas Box begins. It may be that I've grown old in this world and used up more than my share of allotted words in eager audiences, right? The narrator is telling the story. If it's third person, how does it begin? Third person starts from viewing from the outside. The advantage of writing third person is that I can now put in information that the narrator may not know. I cannot write first person and then suddenly write about someone in another city because I couldn't possibly know that. But writing third person, I'm writing about a situation, someone else. What I realized is if you step outside of your first person narrative, that all of a sudden you can start to see clearly. Okay, if you saw a stranger treating someone like this, would that be okay? Does that make sense? This is a device to help you to start to see clearly. So what you have to realize is that if you're not operating from your first kingdom or you're trying to get to your first kingdom, you have developed self-talk that can be incredibly negative. You know, all I have to say to my brother is, if your son were to say what you just said about yourself, were to say that, what would you say? Well, I tell him he's wrong. I tell him he's great. I tell him he's important. I tell him I died for him. Exactly. But why didn't you say that for yourself? So the basis of this has to be, first of all, is that everyone has intrinsic value, not earned value. Because the second anything has to be earned, the second love is earned, it's no longer love, it's wage. So we must come from this basis of our own intrinsic value, that we are worth something regardless of our actions. Regardless of what I do, I am still of value. It's a pretty big leap for a lot of people. And if you can't say that, then say, I'm at least as much value as anyone else. And then it gives you a basis to start making a rational judgment. So what this is taking is a psychological exercise, is what I'm asking for. A psychological exercise that if you have gotten into the habit of negative self-talk, the number one thing, the first thing, is to realize your thoughts are not reality. Your thoughts are not you, but they can become you, and they can become reality if you make them so. I can have any kind of belief system. I can be programmed to believe things that are completely not true. I think I told some of you, I had a friend who's a close friend, whose brother-in-law thought he looked like Brad Pitt. He really believed he looked like Brad Pitt. He looked like Barney Rubble. Okay? He did not look like Brad Pitt. Something was wrong in his brain. And it gives me joy every time I think about it. Because he would walk with confidence and a swagger. I'm looking good. He'd stop at mirrors and look at himself. Most people stop at the mirror and look at themselves and they see Barney Rubble. Right? Even if they look like Brad Pitt. They see the opposite. The fact that something was wired wrong in his brain and he saw nothing but beauty, it's like one of the happiest thoughts I could have. Why not? Why not give yourself that? Why not give yourself that compliment? Why not give yourself that push? Why not give yourself that love? Well, one of the biggest reason is, again, we're coming back with this idea that I am worthless. How do I know I'm worthless? Well, first of all, let me tell you something. You cannot prove to me that you are worthless. You cannot prove to anyone. This is an opinion that you have created. Okay? You cannot prove it. It's impossible to prove that. All right? You can't use there's nothing you can resort to prove that. There's no morality, no ethics, no religion. There's nothing you could do to prove that. So it is an opinion that you have taken. Now, let's say you have been severely abused as a child. Is that going to add to that opinion? Of course it is. If there are people who should have taken care of you who didn't take care of you, of course you feel that way. And you start collecting it, and you start looking for evidences as you start to try to understand who you are. And you look at these hurts and these pains and the betrayals, and pretty soon you start collecting them. Well, if God loved me, he would have done this. He would have been there. I would have been important to him, but I'm not. So what happens is you create a definition. And the only way out of that is for you to decide to change your opinion. But the first thing you need to do is awareness. That definition you've created is a lie. At the core of core, it is a lie. Try to defend it. And then use this mechanism, because once you are aware of it, okay, so that's your homework for this week. I want you to listen to the clever negative talk that you have created in your life. You know, one of our friends, Joe, oh my gosh, Michael, what's Joe's last name? He's one of your buddies.
Joe Dennis.
Joe Dennis. You know, he would always say that he would talk about the agreement. And in the 4 agreements, we talk about this. If I go up to, I'll say Michael because he's handsome. If I go to Michael Sheen and say, you are ugly, that doesn't, it's like, that might hurt his feelings if he chooses to accept it. But you have to realize it is 100% up to him. If I go up to Michael Sheen and say, you are a giraffe, he will look at me and go, you're an idiot. Right? Why? Because Michael's pretty sure he's not a giraffe. He's never had evidence that he was a giraffe. He knows what a giraffe looks like. So it doesn't hurt your feelings. If someone calls me a giraffe, you know, we convinced Michael when he first started with his Tourette syndrome, he'd say things that were really painful. We taught him something horrible, that the worst insult you could give someone is to call them a poisonous stick. That was better than the F word. I mean, he's 3 years old, right? This is Tourette syndrome. And so Michael one day gets really mad. He goes, you poisonous stick. And I had to pretend to be like upset. And I went back to my room and laughed. It's like, okay, because I don't care if he calls me a poisonous stick. Pretty sure I'm not a poisonous stick. But if he says, you're a bad father, okay, I would have thought about that. Am I? Am I a bad father? It would have preyed on my insecurities. Is it a potential? And what I would say, if someone said that to me, is I would say, I have never asked what's in it for me. That's all I can say with my kids. I have never asked what's in it for me. So you decide what that means. I'm sure I've made stupid mistakes, but I've never erred in my behalf. I've always had your best interest. I can hold to that. And by that, I could be yelled in the face, and I have been, and had it not affect me. Laser shield, right? Didn't affect me because I knew where I was coming from. So there is an agreement that you make when you listen to insults, but even the worst insults from yourself, you've agreed to that. So the first thing is awareness. I want you to listen to that voice. I think it would be a really interesting exercise. I invite you to do it, to write down, to carry a notebook with you and write down every negative thing you say about yourself. Right? How you look in the mirror, how these clothes fit, what that means. Again, because you added meaning to that. Okay, to write that down. So the first thing is just awareness. Okay, this is happening. To what level is this happening around you? Second is to step outside of the first person, the third person, and say, if someone walked up to my wife, let's say I look at myself and say, you know what, you're looking kind of skanky today. That's a bad example because she actually did say it. She said it with great love.
Yes.
If I look and say, okay, you're looking pretty, that's gruffy, that's kind of funny. You're looking ugly today. It's like if you were to say that to my wife, I would punch the person who said it, right? So I should punch the person who says it to me, unless it's me. But you realize that whoever's saying this is coming from a very cruel place and an angry place, which may be yourself. So separate yourself. It's the giraffe thing. They just call me a giraffe. Separate yourself from the insult. Be aware of it, separate yourself, and then start using the judgment. Is that okay to say this? Is that okay for someone to treat me this way? And then start being your own defender. It's not going to happen overnight, but I'll tell you this, the minute you do it, it's going to put a smile on your face. The minute you start defending yourself, all of a sudden, you're going to feel an exhilaration you haven't felt for years. Even if the defense is against yourself, who you think is yourself. And it's going to take time, but I promise you, you will get better and better at it. You learned the habits of self-destruction. You agreed to them. You made a choice. Yes, you told me I'm no good at school. I believed you. I decided I would believe you. That's okay. You can unchoose. Sometimes you were just in a situation. You were in a hard place at that time. Sometimes life is too big for us. Sometimes the negative forces are too big. Sometimes we go under. It happens. But we pop back up, and you can re-choose. Say, you know what? Yeah, I would have said that in my previous life. I would have said that years ago. I'm not going to say that anymore. I'm not going to allow that anymore. Okay? I've re-decided that I kind of like myself. What an exhilaration. You know what's going to happen when you do that? You're not going to try to lose weight so you can be okay. You're going to feel so good about yourself that you're going to treat yourself better. See the switch there? You're going to be good to yourself because you are worthy. Because you are worthy of love. Otherwise, you're chasing this carrot that you'll never catch. Make sense? So be aware. Well, the paradigm is that you are worthy. Okay? Tell you what, if someone sends me something that I actually agree with, why you're not worthy, send me something. I'll give you a silver round. I guarantee I won't be giving out any silver rounds. You show me. You prove to me that you're worthless. Okay? You can't do it without lying. You can't do it without sickness. So you start from that premise. Say, look, I'm at least as good as everyone else. And you know what? Maybe all of humanity is damned. Maybe they're all broken. Well, guess what? We are. But we're still far more lovable than we can comprehend, and far more valuable. You come from that premise, and then you start listening to that self-talk and the talk around you. I remember the first time I turned to someone and said, you cannot talk to me that way. I felt like Gandalf, when he puts his staff down and says, you shall not pass. You know that really powerful scene with the big demon? Okay. I've had that experience with someone. Boy, you should have seen their face. And all of a sudden, I was in control. All of a sudden, they changed. I said, you will never talk to me that way again. Do you understand? Boy, did that freak them out. All of a sudden, they became a very humble puppy because they knew I meant it. And basically, I did the same thing I would do when someone threatens one of my kids. Try it. Try it. Try me. Just try me. All of a sudden, you see that power and the fear in their eyes when they realize that this is a person who will defend. Well, to do that for yourself is invigorating. And it starts the opposite cycle. Hey, I like that guy. I like that gal who defended myself. You get better. It starts a better cycle. When you betray yourself, you hate yourself more, you betray yourself more. You see it? You're going to change. You're going to an upward spiral now. You start with the foundation. I am of value, even if you have to take my word for it. Okay? Second, you start listening to the negative self-talk and you counter it. You watch it from a third person and you logically counter it. If you get into this habit of trying to say, but I'm good, whining, it's like, no, you already lost. You don't have to prove it. What you're saying is you're just mean. Why would you say something like that to someone? You call them out, but you call out yourself. Why would I say that to myself? That's where the beginning begins. This is why I cannot help my brother. He was not willing to challenge those thoughts. And what happened, he went to a spiral that became very dangerous because I had a conversation with him one night that he was going to kill himself. I took him on book tour with me because I didn't want him to die while I was gone. So I could keep my eye on him for 2 weeks. And the whole way back, I had a conversation. Within 10 minutes of getting our luggage, I got a phone call from one of my other brothers and said, are you with so-and-so? I said, yes. And he said, he just called me to see if he could borrow a gun for target practice. And I thought, good hell. I said, do not give him a gun, whatever you do. Okay? He was in a cycle where he was embracing this. He was creating negative thoughts so fast that I couldn't keep up with it. And I realized there's nothing I can do. He has to do it. He has to say, I am going to be a superhero to myself and rescue myself. I am going to protect myself because I deserve it. Because that guy deserves it. Forget I, because I's already been lost. Because that person right there is actually a pretty good guy. Okay? So that's your homework this week is I want you to look for it. I want you to write down one day your negative talk. And I want you to start to challenge it. And I want you to be merciless. I want you to just go right after it and say, hey, really? Did you really just say that? Did you just call me fat? You call me fat? Come on, bring it on. My brother is doing better now. Thank you. And he ended up going through intensive electroshock therapy. which I know has been really, after One Flew Over Cuckoo's Nest, has been really demonized, but it actually helped. But he's been through some hard stuff. And so there are times when obviously this isn't going to be enough, but for most of us, it is the beginning. To just get back to the idea that I might be wrong. When I said those bad things about myself, I might be wrong. It's a powerful place to be. All right? I want you to unwire the self-destruct mechanism. That's your homework. I want you to cut the wire on the self-destruct mechanism this week. You don't need it. You're not going to fall into the hands of the enemy. You don't need to scuttle the ship. There's not secret information they're going to get out of you. Okay? You don't need the self-destruct. Maybe the challenger needed it. You're not going to fall on someplace and destroy everything. You think you might. Okay? So let's cut the wire. Let's start treating ourselves as we treat others. Treat them well. You don't walk up to strangers and say nasty things to them just because. You don't walk up to them and tell them their clothes look weird or they're ugly or fat or mean or stupid. Think of all those negative words. You don't do it to strangers. So why do you do it to someone you love or should love? So for some of you, it's going to be overwhelming. You're going to all of a sudden realize there's negative thoughts coming all over. You're going to see it's good. I want you to see that. I want you to wake up and say, oh my gosh, this is here. Candace just wrote, recognizing shame. Yes, it's exactly, Candace, what we're talking about. Because it is shame. It's the shame of being. And shame, we know one thing for sure, that shame begets shame. Always does, always will. We also know that when you're dealing with shame, like take for instance, pornography. You view pornography, you feel shame. You feel bad about yourself. Instead of asking why, instead of understanding, you just go after that self as you're a bad person, you're weak, you're flawed. And so what happens? You feel bad. So you're looking for an endorphin rush. So what do? You go back to pornography. It's an addictive cycle. Okay? Negative self-talk is an addictive cycle. Okay? Shame is an addictive cycle. Can't earn love. No such thing. Don't care what your religion told you. It's impossible. Use your brain. That's why God gave you one. If you think you have to earn love, you've already blown it. You're either given love out of the very act of love, or you're working for someone and you're getting wage. Not the same thing. Okay? If I tell my kids I will like them if they're good and do what I say, then I'll treat them okay if they obey everything I say. Am I a good father? No. I'll never forget the day I'm speaking to a crowd of 1,000, that's about 500 people. And all of a sudden, in this room of adults in the back of the room, I see my teenage daughter standing against the curtain. It's hard keeping my mind. It's like, why is my daughter downtown at this speaking event? And I walked down to her and I said, are you okay? She goes, I need to talk to you. Dad, I've done something bad. Do you think I went and signed books? Do you think I yelled at her? Put my arm around her. We went down and sat on a couch and I held her while she cried. And I said, what can I do for you? She said, I got drunk. I said, how did that work out? Not good. Do you want to do it again? No. I'm just glad you're safe, honey. Good for you. You learned a good lesson. I kissed her and she said, do you want to come up with me? Do you want to go eat some dinner? That's the daughter I drove to get her doctorate in Texas. That's the daughter who writes me every day to tell me how much she loves me. and how much he misses me. If I can be that kind of father, trust me, God can too. I don't think I'm better than God. Do you? So think about it. When you have thoughts like that all of a sudden you make yourself try to earn God's love, you're really insulting God. You're really making them one of the worst of humans. You can't even comprehend his love. That's why you can't earn it, and that's who you are. All right, now I feel like I'm rambling. Michael, take me away, buddy. You know your assignment. Look for the negativity. Let's cut the button on the self-destruct this week.
Awesome. Awesome. Rick, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And be sure to thank your wife for allowing us to have you for an hour. I hope that for everyone here, it's been valuable. I know it has been for me. And let's take a look at that this week. For me personally, I think I don't have like such negative talk, but I do have a self-destruct tendency where I kind of just sabotage things. So I'm going to take a look at that. But thank you very much. Appreciated, and lots to think about. So everybody have such an amazing week. Thank you again for joining us and for being part of this community. It lights me up to see you on this call each Sunday night.
Cool. Good night, everyone. Have a great week.
Yep.
I am. See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Richard. That was a great message.
All right. Thank you. Love you. You take